Inside the pages of our diaries, we write the story of our lives. And now those stories, the hero's journeys we take, the discomfort we move.
All right, Carolyn, we are here. I am so honored to welcome Carolyn McGuire, who is a classroom wellness coach and a parenting success coach. She is an alumni of the MRA and has become a very dear friend of mine. And she's also a retired educator. And I feel like that's important. I feel like this is so much of who you are. And so when I asked Carolyn to come be a guest on the Mind Rebels with me, the Mind Rebel Diaries, she said, okay, but can I interview you? And I was like, of course you could interview me. And so we're going to be doing a looks. Actually, Carolyn, do you want to explain what a looks like, sounds like interview is?
I guess I wouldn't even call it an interview. Like it's just how teachers work. Like when we teach concepts, then we always try to give an example so it resonates with the child and they understand it. And so we use the term like, what's it look like and sound like?
Yeah.
And so often when you tell us your beautiful wisdoms, that's what pops into my head. Oh, tell me what that would look like and sound like in your life.
Okay, awesome. So Carolyn, thank you for being here with us.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
I'm really getting the answers to all the questions I want.
Yeah. Okay. I love this. I for those of you who know me, I have all these little sayings, all these little nuggets. And so Carolyn has kind of prepared some of her favorite, and then she's gonna ask me, what does that look like in your life? Can you give us an example of what that looks like? And so this is gonna be really off the cuff and very candid, and I'm excited to dive in.
Do I get started right away?
Let's do it.
Okay. Before I ask you your first question, though, yeah. I'm just going to share that that's what I loved about being in the Mind Rebel Academy is that I constantly got to see what it looked like and sounded like for all of the participants and you. Like it was, that's really meaty that way. So, all right, here we go. Question number one. I feel like we're playing Jeopardy where I'm like, authentic self, 200.
I'm ready.
You're ready. All right. Sometimes you'll say, oh, that's a hell yes.
Yeah.
And I wondered if you could share it with us an example of what's it look like and sound like in your head and in your body when you get a hell yes.
Okay. I love this question. And I don't know if it's just me, but a hell yes feels like, you know the saying I have, your next best step should terrify your mind and stir your soul. That's what a hell yes feels like for me. It's not like a hell yes, no fear. It's usually a hell yes with some like, oh God, fear underneath. And so it's like this fine mix I look for in my body. I can actually, even as I'm talking about it, Carolyn, I can feel it right now. I can conjure up the feelings of what that feels like right now. I'm not a fearless person. I have like an enormous amount of fear, probably an unusual amount of fear. I was just a scared child. I think I have a very sensitive nervous system. I slept in my parents' room on the floor till I was 18 years old.
That's such a great story.
Until I met my now husband. Yeah, I was like, okay, time to get out. Because I was scared. I was scared that someone was going to break into the house, that something bad was going to happen when we were sleeping. I just have this very fearful mind. And so hell yeses for me, it's like there's fear. There's like, whoo, this feels stretchy. This feels scary. But underneath the fear, there's like this deep, deep anchoring, very powerful, very strong yes.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to get specific, and you can say pass at any point if you want to ask a question that you don't want to answer or you want to think about. So can you think of an example of something either recently or in your past where you gave a hell yes to that you could share with us?
Yeah. So I'll give you two big examples, and I can also give you a couple, like a small, because this is true for little micro choices and massive choices. So when we walked into our now home, which was it was a home that it was in my vision, and my planning, fearful mind thought this home was 5 years out. Didn't think we were ready for it. When we walked into the home 3 years ago now, every ounce of my being was like, this is our home. This is it. It's a hell yes. It was scary because I didn't think we were ready for that. But it was a hell yes in my being. Same thing with the MRA. When my clients and partners started asking me, can you teach me how to do what you just did for me so that I can do this for others? My fearful mind was like, no, I'm a coach. I'm not a teacher. I'm not. But in my being, I was like, F yeah, I can do that. Yes, I can. Right. So those were two really pivotal, like marked moments, like change the trajectory of my future, both the home we live in and the timing of that home and the MRA. They were both massive pivoting moments for me with that feeling. But that feeling is just as powerful and potent and true as like the small micro choices I make in a day that are hell yeses. When I make a choice to invest in myself, or when I make a choice to like say no to something, right? I can feel that.
That one's interesting, that a hell yes can be a no.
Yeah. Hell yes can totally be a no.
Yeah. That's interesting. Okay. What about a hell no? How does that feel then?
A hell no is like, oh, that feels hard and tiring. Like, it's like my whole body's like, oh, I have to do that. I have to. It's like almost like a disappointing, like, oh, there's no energy behind it. It feels hard. It feels uphill. It feels strenuous. It feels like, okay. And like, I can conjure up. I've got a lot of energy. Like, I know that about myself, and I can do it. I know I can do it. I know I can do it, but I'll do it at the detriment of like my well-being or my health or my family or the things that matter to me. And those are usually when I accidentally say yes to a hell no, because I think I have to do it. It seems to always lead me to the no. It's just like a harder path to get there.
Right. It's interesting because the one thing you didn't mention was fear.
Yeah.
Your hell no's you didn't mention fear in there.
So that's such a good point, Carolyn.
It was like, but not fear. Whereas your hell yes could have fear with them.
Yeah. And the fear is like a healthy kind of fear. It's like excitement. It's like one breath away from excitement. But you're right. The hell no's are like, oh, do I have to do that? Do I have to do that? I'll give you an example of like some hell no's. I would say 90% of the business advice I've ever received were like hell no's in my body. And a lot of it I did because I thought I had to be successful or to, you know, to build a business. But I was like, oh, do I have to do that? Do I have to?
Can you give an example of the help?
An example. I've built my business really unconventionally. I've built it on referrals and like my like hell yes when it comes to building my business is like serving every single student who comes into the MRA, whether that's 1 or 100, with like so much integrity and so much excellence and so much love. And I believe in the depths of my being that my business will grow. Our business will grow just from that. And it has. But, you know, then I'll get some like business advice that's like, oh, that's not enough. You got to be visible. You got to post on social media 3 times a week. You got to reach out. You got to do all these things. And I've tried all that, but I'm like, oh, this feels hard and exhausting. And I don't like this feeling. I don't like it. But I've tried doing it, right? But it's been a no in my body.
So that leads me to I was going to ask you about the hell maybes, where
hell maybes, yeah.
It's not really a hell maybe, it's just a maybe. So
it's like do I feel a hell no or do I feel a hell yes? It's like those are the tricky ones, aren't they?
Mm-hmm. Any advice on the maybes?
I was reflecting on this maybe thing because I've had a couple instances in the last year or so where I've said yes to some maybes, and I've been almost in this experiment with them, like, that didn't feel like a hell, like didn't feel like this next step, you know, stirs my soul and terrifies my mind. It was just kind of like, this feels like a solid thing to do, I think. Like it was kind of like, didn't have that passion behind it or that energy behind it that I usually feel with my hell yeses in my body. But logically, it was like, I think this makes sense. And I'm still in the experiment, Carolyn. But so far, those maybes have eventually turned into no's.
Do you have an example for us?
All right. So here, my latest example was I registered for a training last year that I felt like didn't stir my soul. I wasn't excited for it, but I felt like in order to be a responsible business owner, I needed to do this thing. I needed to take this training. And so it was one of those like, oh, do I have to? Like, but it was like, but you should. Like my maybe kind of got me to a yes. And I did. I signed up. I signed up, 9 months in advance of this training because there was this early bird bonus and yada, yada, yada. And then over the 9 months that I waited, it was almost like one thing after another went wrong with this course. And it was like the date was pushed back. The date they said that it was going to start, it was like supposed to be on Mondays. It's now on Thursdays. I have class on Thursday. It was like everything was lining up. It was showing me that this was actually a no. This was something my logical mind thought I needed to be a responsible business owner, but my body knew, like my wisdom knew otherwise.
Interesting. All right. Ready for question number 2?
I'm ready.
All right. You will say bold dreams held loosely.
I do say that.
So can you share with us a time that you had a bold dream and you held it too tightly?
Yeah.
And
okay. So a bold dream held too tightly. So bold dreams held loosely. I love the visual of that. Of like, we have these big, beautiful dreams for our lives. And we take those next best steps to get there. And it's like one foot in front of the other, right? And that's what we talk about in the MRA, right, Carolyn? It's just like, we can't see all the hows, and the hows are none of our business. We can't see the whole path. Where I've gripped a dream too tightly is when I'm really, really focused on the hows. And like, I want the whole plan. I want the whole map. Or I've fixated. My mind has become fixated on a particular like milestone of the vision. So I'll give you an actual concrete example. I remember when we launched the MRA, it was this beautiful, flowy experience of, all right, I'm doing this thing. I feel I like the universe's guide me to pivot from one-on-one coaching to now training coaches. And I put it out to my community very like nonchalantly, saying, who wants to join me for this year-long program to train you to be a coach? There's no guarantee at the end, because at that time I wasn't accredited. I needed a full program in order to apply to the ICF to become accredited. So there's no guarantees. And within 48 hours, 22 women signed up. And that literally, in 48 hours, it changed the course of my business. I now could not do one-on-one coaching anymore, because I had a whole other, I was now pivoting into the Mind Rebel Academy. And so that year was almost like this, it was a lot of work, but it was almost surreal. It was like, I was just in this incredible flow state. The vision was becoming clear. Part of my vision was that I was going to impact 1 million lives. And before the MRA, I thought, I'm going to do that by writing a book or speaking on stages. And then when the MRA started to form, I was like, it would hit me in my very first cohort of these 22 women. And I realized that the way I'm going to impact 1 million lives is through these humans who are then going to create these ripple effects out in the world. And that was not part of the vision, but it was on my vision statement, right? It was there. And had I been so attached to the house, I would have missed that opportunity, right? I would have missed that. But what happened, what was interesting after that first cohort ended and I was ready to launch the second cohort, I remember that time when I was launching the second cohort was probably the most stressful time of my entire business. I was gripping so tightly to the success of the second cohort because there was this limiting belief inside that, that first cohort was a fluke. It was just a fluke. It's not repeatable. You can't repeat this. And so leading up to that second cohort, I had literally my hands gripped like this, Carolyn, like for months leading up to that second cohort, thinking it felt like survival. It felt like, it also didn't help that we were entering, actually the pandemic hadn't started then yet, but we had just, my husband and I and my family had just moved into our new home. And at that point, my husband was thinking about leaving his job to become an entrepreneur. And it was just felt like all this pressure that I had put on the vision and put on the success of this next thing. And if it wasn't successful, then it felt like it was all going to crumble. And that is an example of a vision held too tightly.
Beautiful. All right. I love your examples. I love the concrete ones. Okay. Next one is holding fear by the hand and stepping forward. What's it look like where you held fear by the hand and you did it anyway?
Feels like the story of my life. Every single day. What does it look like? I actually mean that. I used to live my life letting that fear keep me really, really small. And letting that fear suppress all my big, beautiful dreams inside. And there came a point where the discomfort of that, like living like that, became greater than the discomfort of saying yes to, for me at that time, it was becoming a coach and becoming an entrepreneur and leaving the safety of a 9-to-5 job that I wasn't passionate about. And then now later becoming or running the Mind Rebel Academy. It was like, so it's almost like two chapters. One chapter of my life was that fear just held me back and kept me so small from saying yes to anything. And now this new chapter is, again, it's not like that fear has gone away. It's transmuted and transformed. And I've learned how to live with it. And I've learned how to just embrace it and take it by the hand and move forward anyway. Because I believe that there is a wisdom inside of every single one of us. I'm not special. I'm not special. I have dedicated every waking hour to saying yes to the whispers and moving beyond the fear so that I can take those next best steps, holding fear by the hand. And what I've realized is that life will, I always say, like, when we live like that and we take those steps forward and we listen to the wisdom. And when I say listen to the wisdom, what I mean by that is we take the time to really discern and sift through and get to the heart of the wisdom. Like, really sit with ourselves, be with ourselves, and listen to that wisdom that's guiding us forward. That is shining a spotlight on our path in relationship to where we are, to where we want to be in the vision. And it's only those 1 to 3 next steps that we have in front of us. That's it. That's all we got. And that's scary for someone who really wants to know all the freaking hows. It's scary.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a constant reminder. I'm constantly reminding myself of the vision, and I'm constantly reminding myself of, or anchoring into, what are my 1 to 3 next best steps on the path? That's all I have control over. And can I just trust that after those 3 steps, the next will unfold and I'll know what to do. And then the next will unfold and I'll know what to do. And to me, that is taking fear by the hand and moving forward anyway.
I think before the MRA, I would shine my light on other people and know their stuff, like try to guide their steps. That was easier than shining it on myself and looking in. So that's interesting.
Right, because it's easier to see someone else's potentiality and to see someone else's, like, to believe in someone else's dreams, because we are not inhabiting the fear and the limiting beliefs that live inside of them.
Right. Okay, are you, you can say yes or no to this, but you did the Facebook Live with Diana on your relationship. Are you okay to dig in there a little bit?
Again. Yeah, of course.
Okay. Because that one was interesting, because I knew about that journey, that was a tough step for you to take.
Yeah.
Just briefly tell what happened there and what happened after.
All right. So the Facebook Live that Carolyn's referring to is an interview I did with Diana Skander, who is an expert love coach and also an MRA alumni. And was it last month? I think it was last month, Carolyn. And it was all about my story and my story in my relationship with my now husband, Sean. And it was a story I'd never fully told before on such a public platform. And that was one of those anchoring into my next best steps, that it felt like I was ready to tell this story. My husband and I have been together since we were 19 years old. I told you, like, since I stopped sleeping on the floor of my parents' bedroom. And we've been together for like almost 20 years. And we've been through the most incredible and I want to say almost insane relationship journey. The highs and the lows of our relationship were really intense, and we've done an enormous amount of growing together. And it's always a story that is so sacred and so precious to me that it was one of those stories that I just wanted to keep here in my heart with Sean and our kids and my family, and just like, it felt so sacred and so precious. But it's a really powerful story, and it's a story about what happens when you do your own inner work and what can happen in your relationships and the transformations that can happen. and the healing that can happen. And, you know, Carolyn, I, you know this about me, but for those of you watching, like when I say like I journal about my next best steps, I do that every day. I'm like, okay, what are my next best steps today? And I allow my wisdom to kind of be revealed, especially in my journal, literally. I've got, I don't know, like 50 of these filled with all my next best steps and my visions and like sifting through and getting to the heart of and anchoring into what that next step is. And over the last several months, one of my next steps that kept coming forward was to share this story and to start speaking more publicly about it, because I think that there are people who need to hear it. And I think it's healing for me. It's like twofold. And so I decided to share it with Diana and her group, because she's an expert love coach. It was like kind of a perfect kind of marriage for this interview. And as I was telling my story, I shared with Carolyn afterwards, because Carolyn, you were watching it live and you'd sent me a message after. And I had, it was like, okay, I'm sharing the story. I'm doing this. But I had such a vulnerability hangover after. I was like, oh shit. That like sacred thing that I've been like holding and like it's so precious to me is like now open for judgment, and it's open to be picked at, it's open to be scrutinized, it's open. It was almost like it was like, oh gosh. And can I trust the ears that were listening this to hold this story with the love and care that I know it deserves? You know, that these were all the feelings I was feeling. Carolyn, you know that I share a lot in class because there's an enormous amount of trust built with us and our students in the classroom. And so that's a different platform to share very vulnerable things with than, you know, on a Facebook Live in a group that's not even my group. And so it felt, oh God, it felt vulnerable. But the most beautiful thing happened afterwards. I lost count of how many women reached out to me in tears, like either voice noting me or sending me messages, letting me know their emotions about how much my story impacted them and how much hope it gave to them. And it was so profound. I was blown away. And it was one of those reaffirming moments of when we take those next best steps that we've like identified in our souls, like in our wisdom, and we take those next steps forward. And even though it's scary, even though we might have vulnerability hangovers afterwards, like the most beautiful things come of it. And it might not be the things that you have planned or expected or wanted, but it's like the most beautiful things come from that experience. And I love to actually collect evidence of things like that. So I have a whole evidence folder. I have like an evidence folder in my emails. I've got an evidence folder, like an actual physical evidence folder. And when things like this happen, I put it in my evidence folder so that the next time I'm feeling vulnerable or squeezed or fearful of those next steps that I'm taking, I can look back and say, I felt this way before. I know this feeling well. And look what happened when I took fear by the hand and moved forward anyway.
Can we step back just a smidget to the vulnerability hangover? Because I think it really helps people to know what it looks like and sounds like and feels like. So from the minute you stop that recording and on your drive home, because I think that's where
you caught me.
I was messaging with you. Do you remember like the thoughts that you were having before the people started sending you their how you impacted them? That little block of time in there. What happened and how did it feel? What did it sound like in your head?
It felt like sweats, cold sweats. It felt like regret. It felt like exposure, like not the good kind of exposure. I'm now, the most precious thing in the world to me has now been exposed for criticism. Mm-hmm. It felt very, very vulnerable, like very, almost scary.
Mm. And what thoughts did you have? What did it sound
like?
So
the thoughts were, why the F did you do that?
I think that's what you said to me.
Yeah. I don't think I said F either. I think I used the real word. But why did I do that? Why did I think that was a good idea? Why did I think I was ready for that? Why did I feel the need to do that? Why did I put my family in danger? Why did I put my relationship in danger? Why did I expose myself? That's where my, we talk about the rebel mind. That's where my rebel mind goes. My rebel mind, it's like her primary fear is lack of safety and something happening to the people I love, or like something bad happening to my core, my people, my husband and my kids, and like the people, like my core. And I think that's why this story has felt so precious to me, because it's about us. It's our story. It's about my kid. It's about all of us. And so it felt like I had exposed this sacred thing, and now it was open. It was open for criticism and judgment. Mm-hmm. And so there was this regret. There was like, why the hell did I do that? There was like, I didn't even want to play it back. I didn't even want to listen to it again. I just wanted to forget about it. I think I got home and I must have put my covers over like my weighted blanket, and I was like, oh my God, why did I do that? That's what it felt like.
So thank you for sharing that, because I think it's super important for all of us to know, like, that even if it's the next right step, like there's often that yucky part in between, right, before we see the other side to it.
Completely. Yeah. I think that it's like really important to name that, Carolyn, right? Because
I think it's really important to share that.
To share it.
Like, yeah. It's really important to share that so that we can hear that we're not
alone,
right? We're not the only one having those thoughts.
And perhaps that those thoughts or feelings are not an indication that you've actually done the wrong thing.
Right.
On the wrong path.
Right, which is huge.
Right. And I think that the stretchier the choice, the more discomfort you're going to feel in it. It's not like, I think that, again, I think about the fear I feel of like my nervous system. Like this is literally, I was just born ultra sensitive. And I think I was born this way because I was meant to teach about this. I was meant to teach about what it looked like to have really wild, bold dreams and to go for it with every ounce of your being, and to have the fear, have the vulnerability hangovers, have all that, and that not stop you.
It's powerful.
Yeah.
All right, do we have time for another one?
Yeah, we got time. We can go a little longer if you want, Carolyn.
Let's do, okay, the guard. Do you want to tell people what the guard is before we jump into the question?
Yeah, so the guard is, in the MRA, we create these personas for our internal worlds to help us. It's called metacognition, and it really helps us to identify, who's driving the bus, who's at the wheel of our life. And the guard is this persona that is kind of really, there's a lot of protection. She's protecting, he or she or it can be anything, is protecting something more raw and vulnerable. So like my raw and vulnerable part that's my rebel mind. And my guard protects her. And so she shows up in the world a lot. She shows up in all sorts of different ways that I'm still discovering. But she shows up feisty. She shows up maybe like, judgmental or angry or she's in protection mode. Sometimes she also shows up like in people pleasing mode because she doesn't want anything bad to happen to, you know, to me. So she's in people pleasing mode. And sometimes she can actually act in ways that look like love, but it's really like the intention behind it is actually very fear-based. It's, I'm worried about what this person will think about me. So I'm going to like lower my boundaries and over deliver or over serve so that they have nice things to say about me because I'm really trying to protect myself. So the guard, so my guard, the character I've created for her, her name is Brienne she's Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. So she's so powerful. She's so strong. She could literally do anything. She will burn herself out in the process, but she can do anything. And she's got her armor on, she's got her sword, and she is vigilantly on the lookout for danger, in constant protection. That's my guard.
Okay, so you had a huge shift with your guard.
I did. I've had a huge shifts with my guard.
Yeah, so you had said before that the guard's job was to, your Brianna Tarth here, was to protect you and serve you. Was to protect you.
Yes.
And your shift, you said, was that you shifted to that instead of it being a sense of duty and protection, that your guard was to show a deep loyalty, love, and reverence for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Really specific. Can you give us an example of what that looked like when you did that shift?
Okay. So if my guard is in protection mode, that looks like work harder, do more. It's not enough. So that can look like all sorts of ways, right? It can look like my body's exhausted, but I've got this massive to-do list to finish, and it's like push through, persevere, sleep when you're dead kind of energy, right? And that energy is actually served me really well, which is why it was really tricky to spot. It was like work ethic, right? Mm-hmm. It was like I've got an enormous work ethic, and I can work really, really hard and I've had to work really, really hard to build the MRA. It's not been easy. And she's really, but when I sink into the energy of that protection, it's coming from this place of lack and not enough. Mm-hmm. When I shift the energy to a place of for me, the opposite of protection is reverence. So that guard energy, that guard persona, it's not like she like disappears and goes away. I need to like transmute and transform her. She needs to serve someone. Like that's her mission. And so when I stop looking outside, it's like, I'll give you an example, Carolyn. I got an email. Okay, so if I open up my emails, when I'm in protection mode, my guard is looking for what's wrong. So it's like if an email comes in, I'm looking for something bad has happened, or someone has something negative to say, and it's like this vigilance, it's this constant vigilance. And the trickiness of that behavior is that I can go into overdoing, I can go into over pleasing, I can go into like dropping my boundaries so that just to make sure everybody's happy, no one has anything bad to say. Mm. And that leaves me depleted, it leaves me exhausted, and it also leaves me feeling resentful. Mm. So that's the energy of the guard. That's the energy of my Brienne of Tarth. And when I flip that energy to reverence, and I'm like, okay, I'm not in protection, and I'm not scanning my environments for danger. And I am like turning inward towards my authentic self, which is, I have created a persona for my authentic self. And when my Brienne of Tarth is like in deep, like reverence towards that version of me, it's like, she's like, how can I serve you? What do you need? And sometimes that looks like, for example, this summer, I've decided to take a lot of space this summer, right? I've stopped pep talks this summer. I've like canceled a lot of meetings, a lot of projects this summer so that I could spend more time with the kids, because that's what my authentic self needs so desperately right now, is play and adventure and slow and fun with my kids, who are not going to want to hang out with me for that much longer. And so a decision I made, like, that's what reverence has looked like for me. And that is a scary choice for my brand of Tarth, who's like, oh my God, you're going to do what this summer? You're going to like stop the projects. You're going to stop serving. And it's not that I'm stopped. I still have lots of classes to do, but everything else I'm pausing. And so that's a very specific example of leaning into reverence versus operating from a sense of protection.
It sounds like you gave your guard another job.
I did. Exactly.
And it sounds like the job of that guard is to point you in the direction of your authentic self.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly.
So
because she's not going anywhere.
No, but she needs a job.
She needs a master.
Yeah. Interesting. Pointing you in the right direction. All right. When you commit to your next level of greatness, everything unlike that vision will come up to be healed.
Okay.
Can you give us a specific example of when that occurred and what rose up to be healed?
Oh my goodness. So this is when you commit, this is the law of opposites. When you commit to your next level of greatness, everything unlike it will come up to be healed. So I just want to like paint that picture for everyone. You are here today. And here's where you want to be in your vision. And you've gotten so clear about that vision. And you know who you're being in the vision. You know how you're showing up in the world. You've got like elements of the vision here. When you commit to your next level of greatness over here, everything unlike that version of you will come up to be healed in the gap from here to there. In fact, the gap from here to there is what no longer belongs in the vision. And so it's not like we make a vision and we're like, poof, like I am here, or like I'm taking next steps and I'm in the vision, and it doesn't feel like that. In fact, there are moments that feel like massive contractions. Like it's the expansions and the contractions. There are moments that feel like everything unlike it is coming up to be healed. So let me give you some examples. I hold on, I had one and it's just lost. Okay, I'll give you an example. It felt like a big one. When I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, a coach, and I was going to leave the safety of my 9-to-5 job to become a coach, I defined, okay, here's where I am today. I kind of took inventory of where I was today, and I defined where I wanted to be. And inside the vision of where I wanted to be as a full-time entrepreneur, I was speaking my truth. I was working from home, doing things that, like, I had clients in and out of the house. I was getting my kids on and off the bus. I was matching my corporate salary in this entrepreneurial adventure I was on. On Fridays, I was writing pep talks and I was doing all this creative stuff. And I had painted the picture of my vision. And then I asked myself, who am I being in the vision? And who I was being in the vision was I was really in integrity with finances. I was really like, I was being very responsible with finances. I was bringing in an abundance of income. I was speaking my truth. I was, I was showing up. I was sharing my stories. I was doing all these things. So that I defined the vision and I defined who I was being. And then when I looked at who am I being today, the inventory of today, I was like, okay, at that time, I was terrified to speak my truth. Like I was like, my throat chakra was just completely closed off. I was really scared to say, I couldn't even say the words, I'm a coach. And I was a certified professional coach. I'd been a coach for years. I couldn't even say those words. And, you know, when I looked at, you know, financial integrity, I was like, ooh, there's no financial integrity there. It was like, I was kind of like, okay, I'll pay my bills every month and then don't look at it for another month. It was like, ooh, what that exercise did, the inventory of where I was and who I was being in the vision, what that did for me was it identified the gap from here to there. And so in the gap from here to there, then I could really anchor into what are those 1 to 3 next best steps to close that gap. And some of those next steps were get into financial integrity, or start speaking your truth, start your blog, publish your newsletter. Like it was baby step by baby step. And I only chose 3 at a time. And as I did that to close the gap, which happened quite quickly when you use this process of closing the gap that way, in that space in between, everything unlike this version of you over here is going to come up to be healed. So you better believe that all my money shit came up. You better believe I had the sweats every time I looked at the budget and was like, oh my God, we have a lot of work to do here. We have a lot of integrity to get into, right? It was not easy. It was hard, actually. It was like the soul kind of hard. It was challenging. And all my limiting beliefs came up, right? All of my lack came up. I remember, here's like an actual very specific story. I remember I was getting ready to leave the corporate world to become a coach. And I was taking those next steps. I was facing those limiting beliefs. I was busting through. I was doing all the things. I was taking those steps. And then one morning, it was right before I had left. And one morning we got robbed. And we got robbed, and there were hundreds and hundreds of dollars around that was robbed. And that experience, at the exact point I was at in my life where I was about to leave the comfort of a government cushy job and about to become an entrepreneur, and then feeling the discomfort of being robbed, it was like knee dropping. It was like, I don't feel safe anymore in this vision. I don't feel safe. All of my money limiting beliefs and feelings of lack and scarcity and non-safety flooded in. And that experience could have very easily made me turn back around and to say, see, the world's not safe. It's not safe to follow these dreams. It's not safe to be an entrepreneur. It's not safe to not have a 9-to-5 job with a paycheck coming in. It's not safe because anything could happen. All I had at that time was this intuitive feeling inside, and it was those words repeating over and over and over again in my mind, that when you commit to your next level of greatness, everything unlike it will come up to be healed. And I decided I was going to use that experience as an opportunity to heal some shit. And when I reframed it to say, I'm still going, I'm still taking those, I'm scared right now. I'm feeling feelings. These are real feelings. And my money stuff is all coming up, but I am going to sit with this. I'm going to be with this. And this is not going to derail me. I'm going to keep taking those bold steps forward, because I know what happens when you move through the limiting beliefs of your mind, when you move through all of that does not belong, and you transmute those old limiting beliefs into new empowered ones, and you start to become the version of you that lives inside the vision. I know what happens. Life will split oceans and move mountains to bring you to the vision. That's what happens. And at the time, it's not like I could feel, it's like you're so constricted that it's not like you could feel that, but I had that truth running through my mind to get me there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. It's a powerful reframe.
Yeah, it
Very
really, really is.
Okay, let's finish with our last question.
Okay.
Which is what presently, if you want to share, is terrifying your mind and stirring your soul?
What presently is terrifying my mind and stirring my soul? Okay, so presently, I have a vision for what I want for the MRA and what I want for myself inside the MRA and what I want for all of the incredible humans that work for the MRA and serve the MRA and all of the students and alumni that are part of the MRA. And I've got this beautiful vision. And it is so outside the norms of what, like, you know, the advice I've gotten on how to get there. It's kind of going back to our first example of like, I'm like, oh, I know I could work really hard to do all the things and get there. This is going to feel really, really the hard, like not the good hard, like the hard to get there. But in my body, in my intuition, in my wisdom, in my know my next step is, for example, to take parts of the summer off to play, to recharge. And that's part of the vision. It's part of what's going to get us there. It makes no logical sense, Carolyn, right? It makes no logical sense. But I know that this is going to get us there. And this is a step in the right direction. It's a step that's going to get us there. And that truly scares my mind. It especially scares my guard, who's like, you need to work harder for what you want and what you want to build with this. And so that's a present, real life, live example of what is currently stirring my soul and terrifying my mind.
I love the words just I know.
And don't we know, like Carolyn, when you think about your no, like that feeling, it's like we know. Yeah. And then our minds will complicate it with like all the reasons why or all the illogical and like, but if we just like quiet that down just for a moment and get to the no, like we know, and let that be our guide. Can you imagine?
Yeah, sweetness.
Carolyn, can I ask you a question as we're wrapping up here?
Sure.
What is currently terrifying your mind and stirring your soul?
Oh, it just happened yesterday, actually.
Oh, let's hear it.
I was working with a coach, an MRA coach, and she was, we were doing some parent coaching, and she was talking about how cool it would be if I had a library of the tools that I teach in my coaching with parents and teachers. And right away, my stomach just went, but like it excited me. But my stomach and my mind were like, oh, you don't have time for that, or you're supposed to be retired. Why are you even thinking about stuff like that? So that's something's happening there. Something definitely stirred in me that was exciting about that.
Well, I hope that you move forward with that, because for those of you who don't know Carolyn is she works in a methodology called the Nurtured Heart Approach. I've worked one-on-one with Carolyn. She's helped me implement the Nurtured Heart Approach in my home with my kids. And you have such a gift, Carolyn. You have changed the dynamics in my home. You are so incredibly talented, and not just in this work and not just as a coach, but your ability to see, like to actually see. I think that's your superpower, Carolyn. Like you look at humans, whether it's a child or an adult, and you see their truest, most authentic self. You see their potentiality. You see what's going right. That's the biggest gift you've given to me with my kids, is you see what's going right. And it's an incredible gift. anyone listening to this, if you have kids at home and you're struggling, please reach out to Carolyn. She is, I just can't say enough. I cannot say enough about you and the work that you do in the world. And so when you develop this toolkit, can you please let us all know? Because we will benefit from you saying yes to this thing that terrifies your mind and stirs your soul.
I will sink into it as best I can.
Carolyn, thank you so much for being my guest today. And really, I felt like I was your guest today on the Mind Rebel Diaries. It was such a joy having you.
Okay, so it's fun. Thanks for answering my questions.
My pleasure.